Well, we wanted to start off discussing, obviously, the dramatic events of last Friday. We had the two warning shots from the solar system with the asteroid impact over Russia and then the close flyby on the very same day. So I think you put it, the best, Lynn, when you said that this is an expression of decades of failed policy. I think it's there's a lot of press coverage now saying, oh, now we need to build this telescope, or now we need to do this mission, or now we need to do this little thing. And so much of it is very practical and within the current framework of the system. When I think you nailed it most clearly when you said, well, this is an expression of a problem since the assassination of Kennedy. Since we've lost decades of scientific and technological progress. I mean, this is not a new issue, asteroid defense. This has been discussed for decades. People have been warning about this for decades. There's been discussions about how to defend the Earth from these types of things, but we haven't had the type of full, comprehensive program needed to actually take this threat seriously. I think one way to put it just very clearly is the issue of NASA's budget, for example. Around the Apollo program with Kennedy's mission, you had about 5% of the federal budget was going towards NASA. And as you've discussed in your work in economics, that's a healthy investment ratio for science driver programs, where you're investing around 5% of your activity in frontier science driver programs. But following the assassination of Kennedy, and then worse even since, that has collapsed, and now it's about 0.5%. And so there's no real mission being given to NASA, and what we saw with the impact and the fact that we didn't see it coming at all, and it completely took the world by surprise, is an expression of the total lack of preparedness and lack of real scientific progress that we should have been having the last decades. I think it's worth situating there first. And if you look at these events of last Friday, I mean, this is probably the closest warning we could possibly have on both events, right? Now you take the impact over Russia. So this was a object that NASA thinks was about 17 meters in diameter. So they think was about the size of the object. It came in at a very fast speed, tens of thousands of miles per hour. Now the speeds are so fast that when it hits the atmosphere, it's like hitting a brick wall. You can get the image of like swimming through the pool. The water is normally, move around you, it's fluid. But if you jump off a diving board and hit on your belly, it's hard, right?
I did it.
We've all, right? So the atmosphere is the same way. If you're just walking through it, you don't feel the resistance. If something's coming in at tens of thousands of miles per hour, it's like hitting a brick wall. So this thing went from tens of thousands of miles per hour to a near stop in a very rapid period of time, and it caused it to literally explode. So that's how you had an effect where you had something that was only about 17 meters across, a relatively small object by solar system terms, exploding with the force of a standard thermonuclear explosion. The energy released was 30 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. I think it was about 500 kilotons of TNT equivalent energy release. So it was a huge, huge explosion. Now, luckily, there was nobody killed, and there was somewhere over 1,000 people injured. But the point is that if it was just a little bit bigger, just maybe 25 meters across, the effects could have been horrific. Instead of being a warning that caught the world's attention, it could have been a tragedy with a lot of people dead. So it was just right on the border where if it was just a little bit smaller, it wouldn't have grabbed world headline attentions. If it was a little bit bigger, it would have been a tragedy, not just a warning. And it's the same thing with the flyby on the very same day. You had a bigger object, which we happened to only luckily catch a year ago. So somebody happened to see this object a year ago. They were able to calculate its orbit, and they were able to forecast that it was going to do this flyby last Friday. And the flyby was so close that it actually came beneath some of our satellites. So the satellites, the very same satellites that were being used to broadcast the news reports about this object flying by the Earth, were farther away from us than the asteroid was itself when it was flying by. That's how close it was. And if you think about these in terms of the orbital relationships, if the Earth was just about 15 minutes behind in its orbit, it would have hit us. It was only about a 15-minute difference in terms of how fast the Earth's orbiting around the sun relative to this body. So the point is that object, if that were to hit, would have had, they think that object was about 40 meters across. So that was significantly bigger than the one that impacted over Russia. And similar, they think, to the size of the one that hit in 1908 over Tunguska in Siberia, Russia, which leveled about 2,000 square kilometers of trees. Now, we've discussed, it's a good reference point, I mean, because luckily in 1908, that was an uninhabited region, nobody was killed at the time. But if you had that level of impact over any major city, you could have millions of people dead in a matter of minutes. So just to emphasize the point, we had probably the closest possible warning on Friday on both accounts. If this flyby had been 15 minutes difference in its position, it could have been devastating. If this impact over Russia was a little bit bigger, it could have been devastating. So luckily, this was just a warning for what type of policy we need to have. And it's worth noting that the Russians have come out in a very clear response, where frankly, I think Rogozin, the deputy prime minister, put it most clearly when he just said simply that neither the United States nor Russia currently has the capability to deal with these type of threats. And we need to initiate an international effort to develop the ability to defend the Earth. Simple. Not a lot of hoopla about what we have, what we don't have, just stating the fact that we don't have the ability we need right now. We need to make that an imperative for nations to collaborate to develop those capabilities. And this echoes his call back in 2011 when he offered to have the U.S. and Russia collaborate on asteroid planetary defense type systems, which we were frankly rather unique in covering and promoting as the type of policy the United States should be embarking upon. So now this is obviously gaining much bigger coverage all over the world. But I think to key off what Rogozin said, it's absolutely true. Currently, there's no policy to defend against these types of threats. What happened last Friday, if we had even had a warning that this impact over Russia was going to happen, say a couple weeks or a couple months before the impact, we would have had no ability to stop it. We've got no current program to be able to stop an impact like that from happening. Even the one that flew by, which we discovered about a year ago, if we had figured out that a year ago, if we had determined that it actually was on an impact trajectory with the Earth, we wouldn't have had a program to stop that. A year under current technologies is not enough time by all the basic assessments being put out by NASA, the National Academy of Sciences, other independent assessments. The basic amount of time needed to mount a mission, to design, to construct, and to launch, and to have a mission be successful to stop an impact is on the order of years. A lot of times I throw out about 10 years as an optimal warning time. Obviously, if it's a crisis situation, you could do it in less time. But the idea of doing it in a year is not enough time to do a mission. And so that's one side. The second point is we don't even have the basic forecasting capabilities we need. Like I said, we had no idea this one was coming that impacted over Russia. It was a total surprise. Now, just to put some of the background on this, I think is important, because in the 90s, the Congress did task NASA to say to find 90% or more of all the big near-Earth asteroids that are 1 kilometer across and larger. So that was officially that was official policy given to NASA. People in NASA said, "Thank God you're finally asking us to do something about this." So they took up the effort, and they successfully found 90% of the asteroids that are 1 kilometer or larger, the bigger ones, just asteroids. In 2005, Congress said, "Okay, NASA, now that you're completing that mission, we want you to find 90% of the asteroids that are 140 meters across or larger. Now again, that's still much bigger than the two events last Friday, right? So in 2005, Congress said, we want you to find 90% of these 140 class and above asteroids, and we want you to do it within 15 years. Now, as of today, we're not going to meet that goal because NASA hasn't been given the funding and the observation systems and the capabilities needed to meet that goal. So this was discussed in a National Research Council report in 2010 where they did a full assessment of what telescopes we have, what telescopes are being built, what funding's being given, and with any of the current ongoing systems, can we achieve this goal? And they said, no, we can't achieve this goal. And if we were to actually achieve this goal, it would require a major new investment in most likely space-based telescope systems. So that's the current status of our capabilities. As of right now, there's no program on the books to systematically find any significant percentage of these smaller objects down to 50 or 30 or 25 meters across. That's just currently not on the books. There's no, NASA has not been told, we need you to do this, and there's no mission to do this. And again, that's just observation systems. That's not even getting into the questions of active defense and how to defend the Earth. So that's what we need to push right now. And as Lynn, as you emphasized, the response needs to be to unleash NASA. We need to have a full-scale program to unleash NASA and let it go. People have been discussing and figuring out and planning how to do these different things for decades. But there's just no support being given to actually tackle this problem in its entirety.
No, that's why space is so important. We've got to get the mind concept developed. And Mars for me is at this point one of the most important the things on which to focus, because it's strange, it's outside the ken of man on Earth, it's real, it forces us to look at things we don't know, like this whole business about all this dust and dirt and so forth that the solar system is full of. And when you face that challenge, you're trying to find an order, a cognizable order in the process, then that subject itself is the most important thing to do, because it confronts you with what you don't know, and what you don't know is what you must come to know. And therefore, the most important thing we could do is, what we can do technologically, is we can develop systems embedded on Mars, which are remotely controlled by mankind, and develop their systems which can be used to measure things that we aren't otherwise able to measure. And therefore we can get a reciprocal relationship between the apparatus we put on Mars and entrust to that place on Mars, and then use that apparatus to try to search for some other things. Therefore you're forced to go into a field, a domain, which is beyond that of looking outward from Earth. The trick is to how do you get to a point where the human mind is actually encompassing experiences which do not exist for mankind on Earth. And now look at the whole process from that standpoint, from a broader standpoint.